Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the overwhelming, dense stack of information, the academic articles, the market reports, the proprietary research, and distill it down into the most essential, mind-expanding nuggets of insight, all custom-tailored just for you, the learner.
Our goal is always to provide you with a high-speed knowledge shortcut, ensuring that by the end of our conversation, you don't just know about a complex topic, but you truly understand its context, its strategic evolution, and, its global implications for the future.
Today, we are undertaking a deep dive into a company that has not only innovated within its field, but has fundamentally redefined how a major chronic disease is managed. Dexcom, Inc.
Right. For those who might not be familiar, this is an American healthcare technology company.
And they are focused squarely on the development, manufacturing, and distribution of continuous glucose monitoring, or CGM, systems for individuals managing diabetes.
And our mission today is, I think, a highly strategic one. We're going to unpack the company's history, charting its technological evolution from, the first kind of cumbersome 3-day sensor systems right up to the most accurate, seamlessly interconnected system that's currently available.
And crucially, we're also going to map out the incredibly sophisticated ecosystem of partnerships Dexcom has built.
A network that is absolutely foundational to defining modern automated healthcare technology. It's a fascinating story.
It really is. And when we talk about this company, we need to establish context immediately. This isn't some nimble startup or a niche player anymore.
Oh, not at all. This is a multinational financial and technological powerhouse. Founded in 1999, headquartered in sunny San Diego, they have just built immense scale.
And the financials really underscore that power, don't they?
They absolutely do. Looking at 2024 data, they reported US $4.03 billion in revenue?
$4 billion.
And to put that into perspective for their operational efficiency, they achieved an operating income of US $600 million and a net income hitting US $576 million. And as of the latest reports, they employ over 10,300 people globally. But I think the real institutional tell is their market status.
You mean their inclusion in the major indices?
Exactly. They are components of two of the most critical market indices, the NASDAQ 100 and the S&P 500.
That inclusion in those indices is often just overlooked as a financial detail, but it speaks volumes about the company's stability and influence, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, it signifies that their performance is considered indicative of the health of the entire health tech sector.
It establishes Dexcom as a bellwether stock.
Precisely. When analysts want to gauge the investment appetite for medical technology, for chronic disease management platforms, or even for, hardware integration systems, they look at Dexcom.
So they've matured from a pioneering tech firm into a vital foundational piece of the general economic and healthcare landscape.
That's a perfect way to put it.
That sets the stage perfectly for our historical dive. So let's start at the very beginning with the genesis of Dexcom and explore how a 1999 startup grew into this multinational giant we see today.
The founding moment was indeed 1999. The company was the vision of 5 key individuals: Scott Glenn, John Bird, Lauren Unsuki, Ellen Preston, and Brett Megergel.
And from the outset, their mission was pretty singular, right?
Remarkably singular and focused, developing, manufacturing, producing, and distributing continuous glucose monitoring systems. They weren't trying to build everything. They were trying to master one essential technology.
And what's particularly compelling about their early growth is how quickly they solidified their market position and moved to gain serious capital. They went public relatively early.
They did, listing on NASDAQ in 2005 under the ticker DXCM.
Why was going public so crucial at that early stage for a medical device company like this?
Well, for a company developing hardware that requires just immense sustained R&D and, medical device trials are famously expensive and lengthy.
Sure.
Accessing the public market was critical. It was about raising the capital needed to fuel those decade-long development cycles. It allowed them to maintain that relentless pace of innovation, which is really the defining characteristic of their success.
And their growing influence is measurable through those index inclusions. When they became a component of the NASDAQ 100 in April 2020, taking the place of American Airlines Group, of all things.
Right.
It wasn't just a corporate pat on the back. It indicated that in the eyes of institutional investors, their market cap and stability had elevated them to the ranks of major transformative tech companies.
And of course, their subsequent inclusion in the S&P 500 further cemented that status. These aren't just vanity metrics.
No, they have real-world impact.
They mean that vast pools of investment capital, which automatically track these indices, are mandated to hold Dexcom stock, which guarantees liquidity and institutional stability for their continued operations.
So let's just revisit those 2024 numbers you mentioned to underscore what this financial stability actually
Yeah,
supports.
sure.
When a company reports total assets of US $6.48 billion dollars and total equity of US $2.10 billion, dollars, we're talking about more than just cash flow. This speaks to an immense infrastructure.
Exactly. And a strong financial foundation supporting continuous high-risk research and development. That capital allows them to take massive risks on revolutionary technologies like, developing the G7 in partnership with Google, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Oh, definitely.
They aren't just iterating on a product. They have the capital muscle to attempt to redefine the entire chronic care management field.
So with that kind of immense capital and infrastructure, Dexcom isn't just funding R&D in California. They're building a globally resilient supply chain.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to their international scale and operations. While the company is distinctly American in origin, they are truly multinational in their manufacturing and distribution.
That's a great point. The global headquarters and the crucial R&D center, the nerve center for innovation, logically remain centralized in San Diego, California.
Right.
But the physical production footprint is a masterclass in strategic global logistics.
So where exactly are these sophisticated, high-tech sensors being produced to meet this multi-billion-dollar global demand?
The sources outline a very deliberate, diversified manufacturing footprint. They operate state-of-the-art facilities in 3 distinct, strategically located areas.
Okay.
Domestically, they have a major facility in Mesa, Arizona.
And internationally?
Internationally, they have a massive presence in Batu Cawan, Malaysia, and a critical European hub in Athenry, County Galway, Ireland.
That geographic spread is essential, and it tells a very specific story about their strategic thinking. Why those locations? What do they get from manufacturing in Ireland and Malaysia versus, say, just centralizing everything in the U.S.?
I think it's threefold. It's risk mitigation, labor optimization, and market access efficiency.
Okay, break that down for us.
So Mesa provides proximity and security for the North American market. Ireland, specifically the facility in Athenry, offers a fantastic gateway into the European Union markets.
Right, with favorable trade agreements and that skilled labor pool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They understand the complex medical device manufacturing standards, the whole CE mark environment.
And Malaysia, Batu Cawan, that sounds like it's positioned for maximum global reach.
It is. The Malaysian facility is a huge hub for serving the expansive Asian markets, and it allows them to utilize highly efficient global supply chains for raw materials and components flowing through that region.
So this diversification ensures they can maintain production even when facing global supply chain disruptions like the ones we saw during the pandemic.
Exactly. For a life-sustaining medical device, resilient production isn't a luxury. It's a patient safety requirement.
It demonstrates a very mature company that understood early on that successful medical device deployment requires not just brilliant R&D, but also resilient, high-volume manufacturing distributed across multiple continents.
That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's shift our focus entirely to the products themselves because the speed of innovation here is truly astounding. We are going from a 3-day device that was, cumbersome to one that is now considered the most accurate on the market in less than 2 decades.
This chronological progression is really the core story of Dexcom. It illustrates a relentless, capital-fueled pursuit of user experience and clinical accuracy, always focusing on reducing the burden of diabetes management.
And it begins in 2006, right, with the official dawn of their CGM technology.
After years in development, yes. That was the Dexcom STS, Continuous Glucose Monitoring System, the STS.
So what were its defining features, and more importantly, what was the patient experience like when it first got FDA approval?
Well, the STS was foundational, but it was demanding. Its key feature was the 3-day sensor lifespan.
Just 3 days.
3 days. But in clinical terms, this provided up to 288 glucose measurements over 24 hours. And this was revolutionary because, prior to this, patients relied almost exclusively on fingerstick blood glucose testing.
A painful, inconvenient, and really reactive process.
Totally reactive. The STS provided continuous trend data for the first time for many people.
But 3 days means initiating a new sensor every 72 hours. That must have been a huge compliance hurdle for people.
It absolutely was. I mean, while the data was invaluable, the frequent sensor changes, the warm-up periods, the general site discomfort, it meant adherence was a constant struggle.
But they knew that.
Oh, they understood this limitation and immediately iterated. Just 1 year later, In May 2007, they launched the second generation, the 7 continuous glucose monitoring system.
The 7, it seems like a simple name change, but it actually represented that huge quality of life leap we were talking about.
It was critical because it directly addressed the major pain point of its predecessor. The 7 model enhanced overall accuracy, which is always important, but the user-facing improvement was massive.
It had extended the sensor use.
Dramatically, shifting from 3 days to a full 7 days.
Doubling the wear time is not a trivial achievement in medical engineering. From the patient perspective, you're literally halving the frequency of the site changes, the setup procedures, the adhesive wear and tear.
That's a huge qualitative liberation, and that's a key insight. The significance of those early incremental improvements, like the jump from 3 to 7 days, you just can't overstate it in terms of improving patient adherence.
Because if the device is easier to live with, people use it more consistently.
And that translates directly into better long-term A1C levels and fewer complications. It made continuous monitoring practical for daily living, not just a clinical tool.
And the refinement continued quickly. By February 2009, they secured FDA approval for the 7 Plus.
Followed by the crucial CE mark in November 2009, which opened up that massive European market to this 7-day technology.
And that successful early iteration really set the stage for the big technological shift.
The G series. This is where the focus moved from merely monitoring to connectivity and specialized life-saving accuracy.
The first G series device, the G4 Platinum, arrived in 2012. It got the CE mark and initial FDA approval, though it was limited to adults 18 and over at first.
Right.
So what made the G4 a platinum-level leap?
It was a technical advancement focused directly on patient safety. The G4 Platinum improved hypoglycemic accuracy by a remarkable 30%.
30%. Wow. And hypoglycemia, or dangerously low blood sugar, that's the most immediate and critical life threat for someone using insulin.
Absolutely. It can lead to confusion, seizures, or unconsciousness very, very quickly.
So improving the device's reliability and accuracy in that low glucose range, when the patient is most vulnerable, that was a major clinical win. It could potentially prevent catastrophic events, especially overnight.
For sure. And beyond accuracy, the device itself was improved. It featured a longer transmission range, and for the first time, a color LCD screen on the receiver unit, which made the data much more readable.
That simultaneous focus on safety and usability seems to define the G4 era.
It does, and we see rapid expansion on 2 fronts following that launch: clinical capability and market scope.
In 2014, the G4 Platinum was approved for use in younger patients, ages 2 to 17.
A huge deal for parents.
Yeah.
And then came the introduction of seamless connectivity.
Right. In January 2015, they received FDA approval for the G4 Platinum with Share. This wasn't just data logging. This was a foundational step toward remote care.
It enabled the automatic sharing of CGM data with up to 5 other designated people using the dedicated Share and Follow smartphone apps.
That was a monumental change for parents of diabetic children. It gave them the ability to remotely monitor their child's blood sugar levels in real time while they were at school or asleep.
Reducing anxiety dramatically. It essentially turned the monitor into an instant remote alert system.
It was a critical step in turning a personal device into a family care tool.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because the next step, the G5, freed the data entirely from the need for the dedicated receiver.
The G5, approved in August 2015 as a standalone device. So from a product engineering standpoint, what was the core innovation that allowed this data freedom? What did that mean for the patient's pocket?
The core innovation was the integrated Bluetooth radio. They miniaturized and built Bluetooth directly into the transmitter unit itself.
So no separate receiver needed.
This meant the G5 could transmit glucose data directly to a mobile device, an iPhone or Android smartphone, without the need for the separate, standalone Dexcom receiver.
So the patient could just leave that dedicated receiver at home. They went from needing a sensor, a transmitter, and a receiver to just needing the sensor, transmitter, and the phone they already carry.
Which is a massive reduction in the mental burden and physical bulk of managing the disease.
It was the transition point.
It moved the device from being a necessary medical accessory to a true piece of integrated consumer health technology. It streamlined the user experience dramatically and integrated CGM data directly into the patient's existing digital life.
And the pace just accelerates from there with the G6. By 2018, the G6 gained FDA approval, and it received a designation that sounds, purely bureaucratic, but is actually revolutionary.
It was designated the first fully interoperable continuous glucose monitoring system.
That designation is called iCGM, or Integrated Continuous Glucose Monitoring. Let's spend a moment unpacking why this is so revolutionary. What does interoperability actually mean here?
It's a great question. In this context, it means the G6 was designed specifically to communicate easily and securely with other medical devices made by different companies, primarily insulin pumps and automated delivery systems.
Why was that such a technical and regulatory hurdle? Why couldn't they just plug and play before the G6?
The regulatory environment was very protective, and for good reason. For safety reasons, the FDA traditionally required tight proprietary pairings between a sensor and a pump.
Ah, so you had to use Company A's sensor with Company A's pump.
Exactly. Achieving the ICGM designation meant proving to the FDA that the G6's communication protocols were secure, reliable, and standardized enough to manage the life-critical function of automated insulin delivery, regardless of the pump manufacturer on the other end,
So this was the technical key that truly unlocked the closed-loop revolution.
which forms the basis of our next section. It was a massive, massive deal.
And that brings us right up to the cutting edge, the G7, which benefited from that huge Google/Verily partnership.
Right. The Dexcom G7 was approved by the FDA in December 2022. The sources are pretty definitive on this. It is identified as the most accurate continuous glucose monitoring system currently approved in the U.S. for standalone use.
And the metric for that is Arnard, right?
Hard, yeah. Absolute relative difference. And the G7 reportedly has one of the lowest MARDs ever achieved, meaning its readings are incredibly close to the actual blood glucose levels.
So even while they're optimizing for size and integration, the core function accuracy remains their primary competitive driver.
Always.
And finally, we have to talk about the strategic shift toward non-prescription access that happened this year.
The Stelo. Yes. In October 2024, Time magazine named the Dexcom Stelo over-the-counter glucose monitor one of the year's best inventions.
And the Stelo is perhaps the most significant market move since the G5 introduced Bluetooth.
I would agree. It signals Dexcom's strategic intent to pivot, at least partially, toward the non-insulin dependent market. It's a move toward reaching non-insulin using type 2 patients and that, insanely curious consumer segment focused on metabolic health optimization.
It's moving CGM from a clinical necessity to a wellness and preventative tool.
A huge strategic shift.
Understanding the technology is only half the battle. The other half, the truly brilliant corporate strategy, is understanding how Dexcom positioned itself not just as a hardware company, but as the indispensable data provider, the central brain for an entire ecosystem of diabetes management.
That's the key analytical takeaway. They realized early on that the accurate continuous sensor data was the most valuable asset, and they needed strategic partners, even competitors in the insulin pump space, to convert that data into automated action.
And this idea of expansion and strategic growth can be traced way back to their earliest agreements.
Back in 2008, they were already forging foundational agreements. Not all of them came to fruition, like the initial Insulet integration, which was later discontinued in 2013.
But which partnerships really revealed their desire for market diversification early on?
I think the most surprising agreement from 2008 was the development partnership with Edwards Lifesciences.
Edwards Lifesciences, okay.
This wasn't focused on consumer chronic care. It was for a CGM specifically designed for the intensive care unit, the ICU hospital environment.
Wait, a hospital-grade critical care CGM. That is far outside the traditional consumer diabetes management bubble. What does targeting the ICU tell us about their broader vision even back then?
It shows they saw the utility of continuous monitoring extending beyond chronic disease and into broader critical care settings. Maintaining tight glycemic control blood sugar management is crucial in high-stress critical illness situations in the ICU.
Even for non-diabetic patients, right?
Often, yes. Poor control can really impact recovery and mortality. A dedicated, highly accurate, hospital-grade CGM was a major strategic goal, signaling a very early desire for market diversification into clinical infrastructure.
But the real revolution, the one that fundamentally changed the daily lives of millions of people with type 1 diabetes, was the closed-loop insulin revolution.
Absolutely.
And this required securing those critical, non-exclusive agreements with major pump manufacturers, leveraging that G6 interoperability designation we just talked about.
This is where the story of their strategic genius really emerges. The decision to make their partnerships non-exclusive was just paramount. They didn't bet on one pump winning the market.
They decided to become the foundational data layer for every major player.
Exactly. The first major partnership in this realm was announced in 2015 with Tandem Diabetes Care.
Right, and this non-exclusive agreement was designed to integrate Dexcom's G5 and G6 systems directly into Tandem's insulin pumps. This laid all the groundwork.
It did, and that collaboration culminated 4 years later, in December 2019, with the FDA approval of Control-IQ.
So for our learner, let's elaborate on Control-IQ. What exactly is this technology, and why is it rightly hailed as a revolutionary artificial pancreas system?
Control-IQ is the ultimate expression of the closed-loop concept. It uses the tandem T.Slim X2 pump in conjunction with the real-time, highly accurate data streaming from the Dexcom G6 sensor.
But the system doesn't just react to current glucose readings, right? It's predictive.
That's the key. It uses predictive algorithms to anticipate where your glucose level is going over the next hour.
So it's managing basal insulin delivery predictively.
Precisely. Based on the G6 data and the predictive model, Control-IQ can automatically increase basal insulin to preempt high sugar spikes, decrease basal delivery, or critically stop insulin delivery entirely if a severe low or hypoglycemia is predicted.
Which significantly reduces the massive cognitive and emotional burden of managing type 1 diabetes. You're removing so much of the manual calculation, the guesswork, and perhaps most importantly, the intense fear of severe lows, especially overnight.
It moves management from reactive to truly automated and predictive. And the clinical data from the trials supporting it showed measurable improvements in time and range metrics and A1C reductions.
But the qualitative impact, better sleep, reduced anxiety, fewer severe hypoglycemic events, that's what truly defines its revolutionary nature.
Without doubt.
But Tandem only serves the tubed pump market. So Dexcom realized they needed to secure the tubeless market as well to ensure total dominance.
They did.
Mm.
In February 2020, they completed the circle by signing a global, non-exclusive agreement with Insulet Corporation.
And this partnership was strategically vital, aiming to combine current and future Dexcom CGMs with Insulet's tubeless insulin delivery pod, the Omnipod Horizon system.
Right, so this ensures that regardless of whether a patient prefers a tubed pump or a highly discreet tubeless patch pump, Dexcom's data remains the critical engine powering the automation.
It's brilliant.
And the integration with Insulet was comprehensive, not just a simple beta feed. It allowed for automated insulin dosing adjustments based on Insulet's proprietary algorithm and, importantly, allowed for control and dosing adjustments via a smartphone app.
Which consolidates monitoring, dosing, and control into a highly consumer-friendly piece of technology. So moving beyond the physical insulin delivery devices, Dexcom also aggressively pursued partnerships in the digital health sphere. They weren't just satisfied with controlling the hardware, they wanted to ensure their data flowed into every major chronic care management platform.
And this strategy highlights how data integration expands their reach and utility far beyond just selling a sensor. A key partnership in June 2019 was with Companion Medical.
They collaborated to exchange CGM data from the Dexcom platform with the insulin dose data captured by Companion's InPen, which is a smart insulin pen.
Right, and merging those two specific data streams, CGM and dosing history, why is that so important?
Well, because it creates a complete picture for the patient and the clinician. By routing that combined information into both companies' software applications, the physician can see not only the patient's glucose level, but precisely when they took their last dose, how much they took, and what that dosage did to their subsequent glucose trend.
It vastly improves the quality of clinical decision-making.
For sure. And then they connected with larger digital chronic care management giants in 2020.
Two major moves emphasized this data-centric focus. In January 2020, they partnered with Livongo, a prominent digital chronic care company. The goal was to share G6 data seamlessly with Livongo's platform.
So Livongo could incorporate CGM data alongside other patient data like blood pressure, weight, activity, creating a genuinely holistic view of the patient.
Exactly. And then quickly following that, they partnered with WellDoc.
That March 2020 partnership integrated G6 data with Bluestar, which is another significant FDA-cleared digital platform for diabetes management.
The critical takeaway from this trio of digital partnerships is Dexcom's relentless focus on ubiquitous data accessibility. They wanted to ensure that no matter what digital tools the provider was using, the G6 data would be the essential, readily accessible, and actionable foundation within those platforms.
The final and perhaps most forward-looking partnership revealed in our sources completely moves away from traditional clinical diabetes management and into consumer wellness and lifestyle tracking.
That is the strategic partnership and data exchange announced with Aura in November 2024. This signals a formal, calculated integration beyond specialized medical devices and into broader consumer health platforms.
Specifically, sophisticated wearable technology that tracks sleep quality, activity, and recovery metrics.
Exactly. So if you connect the Aura partnership with the recent launch of the OTC product, Stelo, the strategic move becomes incredibly clear.
They are proactively building a bridge between clinical-grade monitoring and the lucrative world of metabolic wellness tracking.
It's the ultimate convergence play. It recognizes that continuous glucose data is valuable not just for managing a diagnosed disease, but for optimizing performance, fueling athletic recovery, and informing general metabolic health choices for the non-diabetic consumer.
By partnering with a significant player like Aura, they legitimize the use of CGM data in that wellness space.
A very, very smart move.
So, to understand where Dexcom is positioned for the next decade, we need to look at two critical areas: the major R&D partnerships that drove their latest innovation, and where they are putting their investment dollars through their venture arms. Let's start with that crucial Google connection.
The development of the G7, most accurate device to date, was not purely an internal engineering feat. Dexcom strategically partnered with Google Life Sciences, which, subsequently rebranded as Verily back in 2015, specifically to develop the Dexcom G7 platform.
Now, why couldn't Dexcom, with all its billions in revenue, handle the G7 development internally? What did a colossal tech player like Google or Verily bring to the table that was so indispensable?
I think it highlights the sheer scientific and computational muscle required to create these next-generation devices. The G7 required incredible advances in miniaturization. It's smaller, thinner, it needs a much smaller inserted filament, all while maintaining superior accuracy.
So Google Verily brought expertise in miniature electronics fabrication.
That and advanced data analytics, machine learning for refining sensor algorithms, and perhaps even non-traditional sensor technology research.
So essentially, they accessed a Silicon Valley level of engineering precision and data science that accelerated the G7's journey to market and guaranteed its cutting-edge sophistication.
Exactly. The G7's complexity required input far beyond traditional medical device engineering. It's a marriage of medtech and big data tech.
And now let's talk about the company's internal investment strategy, which is often a perfect map of where they believe the future lies. In early 2021, they launched Dexcom Ventures.
Their dedicated venture capital arm, yes. And when a major corporation launches a VC arm, they're signaling two things. One, they want to maintain market leadership. And two, they want to explore adjacent technologies that might disrupt their core business before anyone else does.
And what's fascinating here is the dual strategic focus of Dexcom Ventures.
It is. The first focus is logical and defensive, emerging continuous glucose monitoring technologies.
Right, ensuring they stay ahead in their core market by funding potential future competitors.
But the second focus, where the true diversification intent lies, is much more expansive. The primary investment interest is in devices measuring the levels of other types of substances and analytes.
Let's pause on that word, analytes. For our learner, what does this actually mean in practical terms? We've been talking about glucose. What other substances could they be looking to monitor continuously?
An analyte is simply a substance whose components are being measured. So Dexcom has mastered interstitial fluid analysis for glucose. They can translate that same expertise making a sensor that sticks, stays accurate, and communicates securely to monitor a host of other relevant biomarkers.
So give us some concrete examples of what they might be exploring through Dexcom Ventures. What markets would those analytes address?
Well, think about continuous lactate monitoring for athletes or critical care patients, providing real-time data on muscle fatigue or circulatory issues.
Okay.
Or continuous cortisol monitoring, which tracks stress hormones, a massive market in wellness and mental health management. They could be looking at continuous hydration monitoring, which is critical for the elderly or for high-end endurance athletes. They could even potentially monitor inflammation markers or essential electrolytes.
That opens up massive potential markets. It suggests they want to translate their core expertise in accurate, miniaturized, continuous glucose sensing into a continuous general physiological sensing platform.
This is the definition of moving from a diabetes company to a general continuous health monitoring company.
And we also see a secondary but absolutely crucial area of investment for Dexcom Ventures.
Cybersecurity platforms,
Yes.
specifically designed for the software used in medical devices.
Now, investing in cybersecurity for their own ecosystem seems like a necessary cost, not a venture strategy. Why list it as a strategic investment?
Because it acknowledges the profound digital risk inherent in running a connected healthcare ecosystem, especially one where the hardware automatically controls insulin delivery.
If a connected pump or sensor system were ever compromised, the implications could be life-threatening.
Exactly. Therefore, investing in proprietary, cutting-edge cybersecurity platforms, often by funding startups focused on this niche, is a necessary investment to sustain the entire automated ecosystem. Security is not an afterthought. It's a non-negotiable component of running a life-critical technology platform.
So let's circle back to the strategic importance of the Stelo over-the-counter device, which Time magazine recognized as one of the best inventions of 2024. Considering all these partnerships and the venture focus on new analytes, what does the move to OTC truly signify for Dexcom's business model?
Right, so what does this all mean for the big picture? The move to OTC fundamentally changes their addressable market. Before Stalo, Dexcom was largely confined to type 1 patients and specific high-risk insulin-using type 2 patients, a specific clinically defined population that required a prescription.
With an OTC device, they can reach the millions of non-insulin-using type 2 patients who still need close monitoring for diet and lifestyle management, but who may not qualify or want to go through the prescription process.
And beyond that, it expands the market to include that enormous consumer segment engaged in proactive metabolic health, wellness, and performance optimization. People without a formal diabetes diagnosis who simply want the data to biohack their nutrition or fitness.
So the Stelo launch, supported by the move into broader sensor technology via Dexcom Ventures and partnerships like Aura, paints a picture of a company actively shifting its identity.
From a specialized diabetes technology firm to the leading continuous health monitoring platform globally.
They are essentially leveraging their core competence, making a sensor stick,
Yeah.
and transmit hyper-accurate data to tackle a much larger, more diverse, and potentially more profitable global health market.
And they have successfully future-proofed themselves by mastering the interoperability of their data, making them the essential engine for almost any automated health solution, whether it's high-end clinical care or consumer-driven wellness.
This deep dive really eliminates the layers of sophistication and the long-term strategy behind Dexcom's success. Let's quickly reiterate the three major arcs we've covered today for you, the learner.
First, we tracked the incredible speed of their technological acceleration. They went from that cumbersome 3-day STS sensor in 2006 to the G7 in 2022, achieving superior accuracy, miniaturization, and critical features like ICGM interoperability and direct mobile connection via Bluetooth in the G5.
Second, we saw the strategic genius of becoming the central data hub for automated insulin delivery systems. Their non-exclusive partnerships with giants like Tandem and Insulet were crucial, enabling automated insulin adjustments through technologies like Control-IQ, making life safer and vastly simpler for millions of users.
Right, removing the burden of manual reactive management.
And finally, we examine the visionary approach of their venture capital arm, Dexcom Ventures, which is investing not only in necessary areas like cybersecurity, but is profoundly focused on the measurement of other analytes.
And this, combined with the successful launch of the OTC Stelo device and the Aura partnership, signals a profound push toward diversification and mass market adoption in general health monitoring.
It's a compelling case study in how sustained, well-capitalized innovation in a specialized medical field can lead to broad, transformative influence across the entire spectrum of healthcare technology. But as we look at their future focus, particularly that investment in measuring other substances, it raises a profoundly provocative question for you to mull over.
Indeed. Given that Dexcom Ventures is actively investing in sensors that measure other types of substances and analytes, and considering their strategic move to integrate with broader consumer platforms like Aura for data exchange, a platform focused on sleep and recovery, what specific, broader chronic health conditions beyond just diabetes might these newly integrated, highly accurate continuous monitoring systems be designed to tackle next?
Think about the data. If they can continuously monitor stress markers like cortisol or specific inflammation markers or hydration levels with clinical accuracy, they move into preemptive chronic disease management for conditions like kidney disease, cardiovascular risk, or even neurological disorders linked to inflammation.
The technology is proven. The only limit now is which essential analyte they choose to conquer next, and how that integrates into our daily wearables.
That level of personalized predictive health data promises to revolutionize how we approach aging and wellness.
And that's subject for a deep dive all its own.
For now, that's all we have time for. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We hope you feel significantly more well-informed about the complex ecosystem powering modern continuous glucose monitoring.
Until next time, keep learning.